Right, good afternoon, Melbourne. Thank you to AFGC for having me, appreciate it. Let's get started. We have heard a lot today about the key priorities of your organization's sustainability, growth and efficiency, and food safety and nutrition. And artificial intelligence can help with some of these. Let's talk about how. You can't go more than 2 seconds in any publication without hearing all about the different tools for generative AI. But what is this stuff? What is it at all? Well, it all starts with this quote from 1957, John Rupert Firth, a linguist, who said, "You shall know a word by the company it keeps. All language is statistics, the statistical relationships of one word to the next. If I say," and I apologize, I speak American English, if I say I'm brewing the tea, we generally know that to mean a cup of hot water and some dried leaves. But changing one word changes the meaning of other words. That's the statistical relationship. So if I say I'm spilling the tea, that means gossip. Right? So language is just statistics. We need to know this because we need to know how these tools work. This is the unhelpful version that I'm not going to subject to calculus and linear algebra after lunch. That's unkind. But this is from 2017, Google's architecture called Transformers. What we need to know is that companies, big tech companies, OpenAI, Google, Meta, have digested enormous amounts of data, mostly from the internet, and turned that into statistics. When we use these tools, it's kind of like going to a librarian, and instead of asking for a book, the librarian returns one word at a time and keeps going back and getting all these different words from all over the library. That's what these things are. They're really just word prediction machines. If you've ever seen the kids' book, Choose Your Own Adventure, it's kind of like that, except that you're getting a new word at the end of every page. That's what these models do, is they put together probabilities of words that belong together. We talk to these tools through a system called prompt engineering, which is a form of programming. The difference is, instead of programming in a language like C++ or Python or Java, we program in English or Dutch or Japanese or Hindi. Whatever the language that you use, we program repeatable sequences with language. You shall know a word by the company it keeps. If I have these words like B2B and marketing, when I'm prompting a model, the librarian is just going off into the library, pulling out all the words that are related to that word. So it pulls back businesses and markets and transaction from the word B2B. And it pulls back marketplace and content. And the librarian keeps coming back with all these words. When we do this, when we write these prompts, the intersection of all the words that the librarian has gotten is the result, is what the model says. So if we say, list the best performing marketing strategies for FMCG companies in Australia in 2024, that's not a lot of words. Right? So what the librarian comes back with is very generic, not particularly unique, not particularly exciting. If you read this, you're okay, well, that's nice, but that doesn't tell me anything new. If I add a bunch of words, I say the same thing, but with a focus on supply chain, optimization, growth, market share acquisition, and food safety. More words, the librarian goes and gets some different stuff, comes back, and I get more unique and different results. Right? So that's how these tools work. If I go hog wild and I say, list the best performing marketing strategy for Smith's potato chips in Australia in 2024 with a focus on supply chain optimization, blah, blah, blah. Focus on applications of generative AI specific to Smith's potato chips. All these concepts the librarian has gone and gotten and comes back with some very, very specific language, like precision demand forecasting. That was nowhere in the previous results, but just by adding in a lot more words, I get more unique, distinct results. Is anyone here from Smith's? Okay, thank you. Crinkle cut. If you remember nothing else from this entire talk, remember this: the more relevant, specific words you use, the better AI will perform. The more relevant, specific words you use, the better AI will perform. If you remember nothing else, that's the tweet. We don't call it Twitter anymore. There's a structure for getting started with these tools we call RACE, Role, Action, Context, Execute. We build a little framework to help you get started with these. So when you go back to your teams and bring this knowledge with them, you can give them this format. Role, you tell the model who it is. You are a Google Analytics certified professional. You know GA4 and tag match and all these words, the librarian starts sculling off and bringing back relevant associated words. Your first task is to examine this table of channel grouping data and analyze the overall composition. Then we give it a bunch of data, like a really big pile, and we say, execute, analyze the composition of the site traffic and provide recommendations in bullet point format. All these instructions, this is code. This is writing a program just using English. And what does it spit back? A really nice analysis of our traffic from our Google Analytics data and a series of marketing recommendations. This is super useful. Just by giving the model some data and asking the librarian, what are the relevant words that come back with this? There's a PDF, if you want to get it, and the slides will be distributed to everyone, so don't worry about that. But if you want to get the PDF, it's trustinsights.ai/prompt sheet. You do not have to fill out any forms or give any info. You can share that with your teams. When it comes to dealing with AI, think of AI as the world's smartest, most forgetful intern. Right? You have a new intern on your team, and they have 255 PhDs. They know everything about everything, except your company. They're still an intern. They still know nothing. So if you say, hey, do some supply chain analysis, they'll be like, sure, what would you like? And they come back with something very generic. You would give that intern really specific directions about how to do work with your supply chain, maybe a couple of pages of directions, and that intern with their PhD, they come back with good recommendations. And then oddly, the next time you talk to them, they've forgotten everything and you have to start over again. But that's how to think about these tools. If you need to think about how to manage them, they're just really smart interns. One other recommendation, build a prompt library in any system that can store text. This is an app called Joplin, but you want to build a library of the prompts, the code you write for these tools, so that you can share it with your teammates, so you can keep track of it over time and improve it. There's Joplin, there's Microsoft OneNote, there's Evernote, there's Google Keep. If you're stuck on the 7th level of hell, there's SharePoint. But whatever the system is that you use, you want to have something to share that knowledge internally so that everyone in your company can benefit. You can scale your use of AI. So let's talk about use cases. The challenge with use cases for generative AI is that name a function in your company that does not use language. There isn't. From the mailroom to the corner office, everybody uses language. And so there's an infinite number of use cases for these tools. So we look at categories. 6 major categories or types of actions you can take with these tools: generation, extraction, summarization, rewriting, classification, and question answering. Let's look at some examples of this so you can put some knowledge in. Generation's really easy. This is the one everyone thinks of with generative AI. Write an email newsletter from the perspective of Smith's Potato Chips announcing the winner of the custom flavor campaign. Smith's will be developing a sushi-inspired flavor of chip, which sounds delicious. Given enough words, it comes out with a generation. Here's the thing, generation is actually what these models are least good at. They are least good at making stuff. They're much better at the other use cases. But generation is for any form of text. I had a client come to me and say, we have these new tools on our new website, we need a new privacy policy. Stick the tools into the language model, it spits out a privacy policy. Then we take that to our human lawyer, because you never, ever, ever let AI outputs from in finance, law, or health. You never give that to the general public without having human review. The lawyer made a couple of corrections, and we were good to go. We saved an enormous amount of time by having the AI do the first pass. These tools can code really well, and you don't need to know how to code. You just need to know what to ask for. I gave it some instructions. I said, this is what I want you to write, and it wrote the code for me. Saved me about 45 minutes, and it was done in seconds. They can write software. I wanted a banner for my blog that said, hey, you're reading some old content. And there's all these services that were saying, hey, we can do this for you. There's $25 a month. I'm like, it's just a banner. So I said to a language model, how much do you know about writing software from my CMS? And it said, we can do that. And it did. And in the span of about 45 minutes, I wrote a new piece of software that I put on my blog, and it's so good, it's on the web for free. What services and software are you paying for today that you could have a machine write for you custom that's then yours that you can stop paying for? We heard a lot about cost optimization in the most recent session. Think about having machines write software for you to do some less essential functions. Second is extraction. Take data out of data. Everyone knows what this is. I hear the collective. I didn't know what this was. So I said, I'm going to go download this. I want this. I said, let's say I represent a grocery store chain. Extract from this huge document what background information, if the public comment period was still open, what background information would I want to provide to the inquiry board to say, here's the things that are important that you need to know. Anytime you get a piece of legislation or policy or something or economic data, you want to use these tools to quickly summarize, to quickly extract out the relevant parts so that you know what to do with it quickly. Here's the Agricultural Legislation Amendment Act of 2022. This was like a gazillion pages long, all about food labeling. And I said, just tell me the portions that are relevant to FMCG food manufacturers from a food labeling perspective. Forget the rest of this huge document. What if I could boil it down to just a handful of things? And it did. It said, hey, review your chemical usage, veterinary instructions, extracting information out, the relevant parts that you need to do your job, instead of having to read through the entire gigantic thing. My teacher has a martial arts school. We have a lot of really nice 5-star reviews. You and your companies, you have product reviews on major e-commerce retailers. If you have store locations, you have reviews of your stores. Take the 5-star reviews, that's the voice of the customer. Pull them out, extract them, and then repurpose them as social media content, as email content. And it works really well because you are using the voice of your customer. You're not having to think about, well, what should we say to the customer? Give them their words back just by extracting the data and then having a language model process it. Third category is summarization. Take big data, make it small data. My favorite use case by far, I am on a lot of phone calls every week. Most days I can't remember what I said. So I take the transcript and say, give me my meeting notes and action items. What did I promise someone to do that I've already forgotten about? Some software packages, this is one called Otter, do this automatically. They record the call and they give you your meeting notes. Like, oh, that's a huge time saver. Now I don't have to relive the meeting that I already went through just to remember what I said. Anytime you've got large amounts of data, think about your call centers. How much voice data do you have that is just laying in a database somewhere that you could be using and leveraging with summarization technology? This is a fun one. I went to Walmart's site and it said, the Marketing and Customer Insights Division, let's infer their marketing strategy based on all the things they're hiring for, because you don't hire people for fun. You hire people because you have needs. So we took all 860 positions that they're hiring for, and it said summarize it. And it says, here are Walmart's likely strategic imperatives based on what they're hiring for. You want to do competitive intelligence? This is the way to do it, because people are telegraphing their insights for you. You just have to get the data and summarize it. Things like, this is a restaurant company that I worked for. This is synthetic. I had to anonymize it because it was under NDA. Tons of customer feedback, surveys and things. They were just letting it sit. They just let it sit because they didn't have the manpower to process it. We stuffed it all in a language engine, said, give me the 3 things that you're doing right, the 3 things you're doing wrong, and 3 things to fix immediately. And it processed 5,000 reviews and turned them into 3 sets of recommendations that were immediately actionable. Think about all the data, the voice of the customer that you're not using because it's sitting in a database somewhere. People love to put up content on YouTube. Last November, Google announced a really big change to their algorithm, and I did not have time to watch the 400 hours of videos that were published. So we took all the captions out of YouTube, stuffed them in a language model, said summarize all 400 hours, and it gave me a list of 30 things that these handful of people had published. There were only 3 net new things on that list to know out of all 400 hours. So I saved myself 400 hours by just not watching any of it and having a language model process it instead. How many things like Senate hearings do you have to suffer through? Instead, take the transcript, just digest that down, save yourself time and sanity. Number 4, rewriting. Turn one form of data into another form of data. I got this NDA. I looked at it, I said, were you drunk? Did you copy and paste it off of Reddit? What happened? It was awful. My lawyer looked at it and laughed. I said, rewrite this NDA as a proper NDA, and the tool did. My lawyer looked at it and said, thank goodness he didn't sign the first version. It would have been unenforceable anyway. But any type of contract or paperwork where you need to rewrite it, maybe adjust it, these tools can do it for you, and they're so good at it. They are professional development tools like no other. I was reading through Walmart's job listings. They mentioned something called 4ITB. I don't know what that was. I looked it up quick, and I still didn't know what it was because it was just a bunch of management jargon. So I said, explain this concept in terms of pizza. And it rewrote the ITB, 4ITB management framework in terms of the chef, the baker, the designer, and the server. It's about operational coordination. I did not know that. Any concept that you are unclear about, ask these tools in a language you know. Explain this in terms of the circle of fifths, the back nine on a golf course, cooking pizza. What you know best, these tools can translate any idea, any concept, even the most difficult ones, into a language that you understand. And even better, if there are things that you want to tell your customers, figure out what they know and have these tools rewrite your information in their language. Here's another fun rewrite. I took this week's Coles circular, which is off the website, and I created a synthetic persona. Melbourne woman, 25 to 34, and I gave it a bunch of interests based on stuff I found on the web. And I said, take the Coles circular and rewrite portions of it, extract out just the parts that this ideal customer profile would like, and turn it to an email. And it did. It came up with this lovely email, Coles, your Melbourne lifestyle companion. Fuel your wellness journey, quick and easy meals. It's all the stuff from the circular, just selected and reformatted to a format that that persona would like. You're doing the hard work already. You're building all this marketing content. All you need to do now is give it to a language model and say, rewrite it for this audience, or this audience, or this audience. Right? All you gotta do is get the language models to translate the stuff that you're already working hard on. Here's a memo, real memo. Bob, you sent over 2 months of invoices in one day. Of course it's not done. It's not gonna be done anytime soon because this stuff takes time. If you needed it soon, you should have let it sit on your effing desk for 2 weeks. You can F right off and you'll get it when you get it. Go F yourself, Karen, in accounting. Rewrite the following memo in a professional tone. Dear Bob, I hope this message finds you well. If you have ever wanted to say something that you knew would get you fired, say it to a language model and then say, rewrite this for me in something that's appropriate to the context. So you still get the therapeutic benefit of saying what's on your mind. And then the model turns it into something that will not get you fired. Fifth, classification. Sort out and organize this data so we can do something with it. Here's an image from Instagram. This woman had gone shopping, I think she was at Woolworths, and posted this on Instagram. And I gave this to the GPT-4 Omni model and said, tell me what's in this image. If you're doing social media marketing or consumer insights and you have social media data, you can now use these tools to see, to analyze, and then provide data back to you in a usable format that you can coordinate with statistics. You could take the Instagram performance data along with the product listings and say what products seem to be resonating best with our consumers. Right? These models can look at things, see things, and turn that into knowledge. I took 1,700 FMCG Instagram posts from this year, 75% Australian, 25% US, 7-Eleven, Priceline, Harris Farm Markets, Chemist Warehouse. I said, let's categorize and organize this into top and bottom performing posts. What can we learn from the top performing posts compared to the bottom performing posts? We have the data, may as well use it. Top performing posts, giveaways and contests, partnerships, collaborations, visually appealing content. Bottom performing posts, informational and educational content, lack of visual storytelling. If you want to know how to make anything perform better, give it the data and say, organize it for me, and then tell me the insights from it. These tools are very capable of this. And by the way, these are all the off-the-shelf consumer-grade tools. I'm using Google's Gemini for this. It's like $30 a month. We are not talking about spending $1 gazillion on this. It's just learning how to use the tools. Sixth category, question answering. Give the model data and then ask questions of it. Over lunch, I really enjoyed Amy's presentation earlier on the budget. I don't know anything about the Australian budget. I'm from the US. We're terrible at anything budgeting. Our government's barely functional. So I took the budget that was released last night, I put all 400,000 words of it into a language model at lunchtime and said, analyze the budget, tell me what's in here. And it did. It took about 60 seconds to do the analysis. And then I said, narrow our analysis to FMCG. How does the Australian federal budget impact the FMCG industry, especially as focused by the AFGC? It says, here are the things in the budget that will specifically affect FMCG. You could take that even a step further and say, how would this affect Cadbury? How would this affect Kohl's? How would this affect Woolworths? Anytime you've got a large amount of data, you can have these tools condense it, and then you ask questions and get relevant answers. And this is a good thing to do because you're providing the data to the model. It's not making this up. All it's doing is analyzing it and answering your questions from the data. Who loves RFPs? Yeah, nobody. No one loves good RFPs. I said, hey, we issued this RFP. Build me a scoring rubric. And the model did. And then it said, here's all the RFP responses. Everyone knows reading through these 88-page responses. Here's our building and a lake and all the things we're good at. There's like 5 things we actually care about. So I said, here's all the RFP responses. Score them. Build me a short list of the top 3 to review. This takes the RFP process from 45 days of review to 45 seconds of review. Right? Think about how much time savings you can get having these models do the drudgery of reviewing this data. Again, NDAs, review the contract. Tell me, should I sign this? Is it a good idea to sign this? Any contract that you're working with, have these tools analyze it for you. You tell them what's important. You give them the data. They tell you what you want to know. And we see these tools being used as question answering in the environment. So Carrefour has this on their website. Consumers can go in and say, hey, here's what I want to do, or here's what I want to cook. And the tool, which is backed by the GPT-4 model, will just spit out, obviously, linked products saying, here's the things that you should buy at the store. Take it a step further, Walmart has the Ask Sam app. This is an app that has generative AI baked into it so that when a customer goes to an associate and says, where's this? And the associate's like, I have no freaking idea where that is. They get out their phone, they ask Sam, and it tells them where in the store the thing is. Right? So this is a great use of generative AI because it's low risk. If the model says something incorrect or possibly inappropriate, the employee does not have to say that out loud to the customer. The employee can simply say, oh, let me try again. So with those use cases, when should you use generative AI? The answer is all the time. We used to have a complicated flow chart. No, use it until you find the things it's not good at. Back in late summer last year, Boston Consulting Group and Wharton Business School did a study. They broke up some of their best consultants into a control group and a test group, gave them access to generative AI. The consultants that used AI got 12% more done, 25% faster, with 40% higher quality than the consultants who did not. Right? Immediately, they saw greater results. And what was crazy is that in the test group, the bottom half performers, once they started using AI, had scores that equaled the top half of performers in the control group in 5 hours. 5 hours of using these tools turned bottom performers into top performers. What would your organization look like if you could take the bottom 50% of your team and turn them into the top 50%? And these tools have no limits when it comes to the use of things like language and imagery. In a Nature magazine study last fall looked at divergent creativity, brainstorming, and said, on average, machines are up to 81% more creative with higher quality ideas in a brainstorm than humans. Why? Some people, a lot of people, have really bad ideas. How do you identify use cases for AI? This is the secret. Think about all the things that you and your team do. Which of those tasks make you do this? Maybe reviewing Senate inquiries, right? Or maybe doing score one, score 2 emissions reporting. Whatever the thing is that you don't like, find a way to get the tools involved and you will find immediate value for generative AI. Now, it's not all sunshine and roses. There are issues with these tools. They do have biases. OpenAI warned that there are biases because it's trained off the data on the internet. So if you're going to make something customer-facing like Carrefour did, you'd better do a lot of testing to make sure that it can't be abused. There are issues with copyright on 2 fronts. One, the data that was used to train these models, it is still unresolved in most courts as to whether or not that violated intellectual property rights. That's why companies like Google and Meta are able to publish really good models because we signed away all our rights years ago to them and to give them all this data so they can use that to train. Other companies like OpenAI, not as much. It's not clear how this is going to end up, and it varies by jurisdiction. In the EU is already leaning towards saying models violate intellectual property owners' rights. In Japan, the opposite is true. Japan is saying it's so transformative that it's not a violation of IP. So stay tuned on that. On the other side, except for 5 nations, almost every nation on the planet, including Australia, says that machine-made content cannot be copyrighted. In the USA, we have a case called Naruto versus Slater when a chimp took a selfie. The photographer tried to copyright it, it went to court, and the court said the chimp's not human, copyright only applies to human, ergo the content's in public domain. Machine-made content is the same way. So if you're creating lots of content for the internet, you can't enforce copyright on it. When it comes to the safety of your data, the golden rule is if you are not paying, your data is being used to train. So all the people in your organization, and it's 75% of them, who are using generative AI with or without your permission, if they're doing it with free tools, they're handing over your corporate data to a third party for that third party to use. You've got to develop policies around governance and then give employees paid tools so that your data stays safe, because they're gonna use it anyway. It's a lot like these. Remember these from the early 2000s when people started bringing these to work and IT had a fit? People did it anyway. People are doing this with AI today, whether we want them to or not. And these can be misused pretty badly. There was a case recently, a deepfake managed to scam $200 million out of a Hong Kong middle management financial services firm because the person on the phone thought it was real. Regulation is coming. The Australian government's talking about regulation. There's some budget earmarked for it in the budget revealed last night. The current gold standard is the EU AI Act. And if those of you remember GDPR, pretty much the same thing. So if you enjoy GDPR, you'll enjoy this. I don't know anyone who enjoyed GDPR. 5 key provisions that are going to be the gold standard for most countries implementing regulation. Deter illegal use of AI, like deepfakes. Detect high-risk usage, things like mortgage applications, for example, or profiling that leads to racial or gender biases. Document the use of AI throughout your firm. Disclose the use of AI when it's customer-facing, and defend the rights of individuals. Those 5 key things, of those 2, document and disclose are the most important for all of us to start doing immediately. How is this going to impact marketing? A bunch of different ways. In a study from MIT Sloan last fall, when given labeled content, consumers not only did not object to AI-generated content, they actually preferred it, which was really awkward. Given in this case study, they said, yeah, consumers universally liked AI content better for promotional stuff and cause-based stuff. So it's not going to harm your relationship with consumers as long as you disclose it properly. It will have a big impact on your marketing, particularly search. The Wall Street Journal publishers estimate 20 to 40%. This morning at 3 a.m., Google's I.O. event happened, and they showed off their new AI previews. It's going to be a lot more than 20 to 40% because Google is just going to take away a whole bunch of stuff. When you go into any of these tools and you ask them questions, you get really good answers and nothing to click on. So Google is just going to stop sending us a whole bunch of traffic. So if any part of your business is dependent on Google traffic, it's imperiled. Your homework assignment is to ask your marketing team how much of our traffic comes from unbranded search that is not using our brand names or terms. If it's more than 50%, you need to sound red alert because that traffic is going away soon and it's going to impact your business. So how do you fix that? There's 4 different antidotes. Number 1, be everywhere. Be in as many places as you possibly can be. Invest like crazy in your brand because brand will be the only thing that will protect you. Right? So be on podcasts, show up on Twitch streamers, work with influencers, be as many places as you can be. Upend your PR strategy. Right? Getting an article in the Sydney Morning Herald is great, but from a language model perspective, so is getting an article in the Barrier Truth newspaper, right? Which has like circulation, like the whole town has 7,000 people in it. It's the same to a language model. So be as many places as you can be. The press release, believe it or not, is relevant again. That it's so good at getting data out there. If you want to make your sites ready for AI agents, purchasing agents, the easiest way to do that is to make it visually accessible for visually impaired folks. Right? If you comply fully with the DAA, you will be in great condition. You need to have a newsletter or a text messaging list or something where AI is not in between you and the customer. And you need to have some kind of digital community, some way you can reach consumers in a way that, again, AI is not in the way. So definitely not any public social media. Think about things like Slack or Discord. If I was building for consumers today, I would build on Discord because it's the best single place to reach a lot of consumers, particularly Gen Z and millennials. So what's coming? What's next? What's around the corner? These tools are becoming so multimodal and so intelligent. This is OpenAI's Sora. With a text prompt, it generated this video. No other instructions, just then a text prompt. And it's absolutely stunning. This is coming to market very, very soon. This is Figure 01. This is a robot that you can talk to.
Whoops. Can you explain why you did what you just did while you pick up this trash?
On it. So I gave you the apple because it's the only edible item I could provide you with from the table.
And this is from, let's see if this will play it. I care about unit pricing, that is the lowest cost per 100 grams. Based on that criteria, what of the following candies is the best deal? The best deal was Cadbury Twirl, the 4-pack. This is the Kohl's across the street. I did this yesterday with GPT-4 Omni, the new model. This is not some futuristic demo. This was yesterday morning. Ken talked earlier about how in a couple of years, this stuff is going to come to consumers. It's today. This morning, Google was showing demos of how to do this within the Google app. So shopping assistance is today. Agent networks are going to be the thing. This is something from, again, Google I/O this morning at 3 a.m. They said, let's show how this works. First, we're going to build a meal plan. They just went to Google, said, build a meal plan for a 3-day meal plan. And it did. It came up with this nice meal plan. And then it said, hey, do you want to add these groceries to your shopping cart? And then do you want me to go buy them? Right? That's today. That is not 2 years from now. This is rolling out very shortly. It's going to be in the Google app, I believe they said in 4 to 6 weeks. So get ready. Again, remember, if you want Google to be able to buy from you, and we saw in the UBS presentation about how important online e-commerce is, the way to get to that is to make your sites easily compatible for the visually impaired. You can do virtual focus groups. I've done focus groups where I'm the only human in them, but I'm still having rich interactions and getting feedback from consumers. If you built a focus group with 3 personas, like a 25 to 34 woman from Melbourne, a 45 to 54 man from Sydney, and ask them about a product release or something with your ideal customer profiles, they will give you realistic feedback, enough that you can then commission a human focus group to validate it. And this stuff is going to be everywhere. It's in every piece of software. You could see Adobe Photoshop has it everywhere. How many of you use Instagram? Okay, a decent number in the room. Have you noticed the little Ask Meta chicklet last week? That is the Llama 3 model deployed inside Meta's architecture. I asked it, what's on sale this week at Woolworths in Melbourne? And it went out and found it. So this stuff is everywhere. Consumers are going to expect this to be everywhere, and you have to be able to integrate with it. The intelligence revolution is here, right? This is the question everyone wants to know the answer to. Who's going to lose their jobs? And there's 2 conflicting answers. The Brookings Institute says, AI will take away tasks, not jobs. Everything's fine. Calm down. Sam Altman says, all jobs are going away. You're all fired. The reality is going to be somewhere in between. But for an idea of where this is going, back in 1762, there was a profession called spinster. People who took fiber and turned it into thread. That year, a tool came out called the spinning jenny, which did the work of 20 of these people. A few of them went on to operate this machine. Most of them stopped being spinsters. What's challenging about AI is that we are going to have to adjust from being the doers to being the conductors of the orchestra, to being the managers of machines. Right? That's the big shift that we're going to have to make mentally. And it's not just us. In the 2024 Work Trend Index done by Microsoft, this is stunning to me. 66% of leaders will not hire someone who does not have AI skills. Right? That is a crazy number for something this is new as of 6 months ago, a new trend in hiring. So if you want to be a top-tier candidate, you've got to get on the boat. How this is going to affect jobs depends on the kind of company you work for. Progressive companies will say, we can take the boring jobs, get them out of there, and upskill you. Regressive companies will cut headcount as fast as they possibly can. So it depends on the kind of company you work for. The reason this feels so sudden is because normally these generational shifts happen across generations. You do things one way, your kids do it a different way. Their kids do it a different way. This is all happening in 10 years, within the next 10 years. We're already 5 years in, so there's going to be a lot of short-term dislocation. But the message is, if you are complacent today, it's displacement tomorrow, whether you're a person or company. So some final thoughts. The bare minimum tools that you should know how to use are Google's Gemini, ChatGPT, and Microsoft Copilot. Those are the bare minimums. There's a more complicated chart of the recommended tools based on the individual tasks you're trying to do. And again, we'll provide you the slides. I see people like scrambling for their phones. Based on what you're trying to do. And there's all sorts of different models for all sorts of different particular use cases. But there's going to be two things that are going to set you apart in the future, in the very near future, like tomorrow. One, the quality and quantity of your data is a differentiating factor because these models are smart, but they don't know what you know. If you have data that you've been collecting, you have the ability to get better outputs from these models. And number two, skills have been equalized. I can't write well, I can't sing, I can't play music. These tools can. I just have to provide the ideas. So whoever has the most best ideas wins. Whoever has the most best ideas wins when skill doesn't matter anymore. So with that, I want to remind folks that AFGC has cleverly brought all these great thought leaders to you to learn and to warn you this stuff is happening right now. So make sure that you can stay connected to future AFGC events. There's some resources and things, but with that, thank you very much.